KMJ.
From City Hall to Sacramento and Washington, KMJ's conversation continues with Aaron Abeytia.
Joining me this afternoon on KMJ is WalletHub analyst Joe Gonzalez. WalletHub, a great financial resource, and today we're talking about the times vexing issue of credit card debt. Some good news, kind of a surprise during the pandemic, similar to how people thought we were going to have a baby boom and we had what appears to have been the opposite. Credit card debt may have followed that same trend as Americans actually got rid of nearly $83 billion in credit card debt for 2020, contrary to what you might think with tough financial situations. Jill, a pleasure to have you back.
Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So what do we make of $83 billion, quite a record figure, of credit card debt being paid down during a pandemic when finances for a lot of people are tight?
Yeah, this really is a historical record. It's certainly the most payoff by quarter that we've seen in about 35 years. And that's a little bit surprising given the pandemic. But that being said, we still do have a lot of debt. We still collectively owe nearly $1 trillion to credit card companies. On average, as a household balance, that's around $8,000. But it could be a lot worse. So the good news is that people really spent their money on paying down debt instead of incurring new debt this year, or at least in 2020.
Now, would you say perhaps some of the federal stimulus efforts and such, and even some of the additional unemployment benefits that people were getting, that aided them in being able to pay it off, and maybe it was a safety thing, trying to wipe away debt where possible?
Definitely. I think it was a combination of a few things. I think the stimulus packages helped. I think more unemployment benefits helped. And, we asked people, we took a survey, and about 35% of Americans just said the pandemic actually did make it harder to go into credit card debt.
What is it that led to this, at least that we can guess? Is it the length of the pandemic that kind of caused the trend to reverse course?
Yeah, I think at first everyone was very cautious what this would mean, especially because we saw such drastic drops in terms of employment. And then we saw things kind of steady out, and then maybe we took another dip in unemployment. So it really was interesting. Just from month to month, it was really hard to predict in terms of the virus and how that would shut things down in terms of what different states were doing. So this looks, even different from state to state, but overall, definitely something that was unpredicted and good news.
Talking with WalletHub analyst Joe Gonzalez, 2020, a major year for people to start paying down credit card debt. About $83 billion in credit card debt wiped out in states like California that have a high cost of living. Oftentimes people assume that debt is going to be heavier, and credit cards, especially during a pandemic, would seem like something that people would have to rely on quite heavily. What did California's pay down look like? I understand WalletHub has it broken down, but as a whole, what does a state, and then if you can go into the Central Valley of California, look like?
Well, we don't have it broken down exactly regionally. I can certainly name off some cities, but California is an interesting case because it has, the richest of the rich, and it had also communities of extremely low income and poverty. And those two areas are kind of where we're seeing the most payoff. Either we see places with very high household credit card debt to begin with, more affluent communities that were able to pay off a good chunk of that, or we see impoverished places that still were able to pay off a good chunk. It's really the middle class areas that seem to have been hit the hardest.
There's at times disagreement as to what debt means for the overall economic picture as well as consumer spending. Disagreement sometimes along political lines or other ideological lines as to what areas of the economy do what in the grand scheme of things. Student loan debt, for example, is something that a lot of people generally feel is a burden. But aside from consumers' individual finances, what does credit card mean for the overall economic picture?
Well, it certainly speaks to consumer spending and kind of what consumers are spending on and how comfortable they are with spending money and kind of reinvesting into local economies. So that's where we gauge this household credit card debt. Now, individually, it's not the best debt to have, right? Mortgage debt is considered good, even auto loans, student loans. But this, can really fluctuate over time. And what we're seeing again, when we asked consumers their thoughts, about 1 in 10 said that as soon as the economy is open, as soon as things and retail dining is fully back open, about 1 in 10 in them plan on going on a shopping spree. So I would not expect the great payoff that we saw in 2020 to continue through 2021.
Talking with WalletHub analyst Jill Gonzalez, 2020, a major year for paying off credit card debt. Jill, when that happens, what is the overall deal with interest rates during a pandemic as they pertain to credit cards compared to, say, when it opens up and there's this potential surge of people spending money and therefore pulling the credit card out more often? What will that do potentially to interest rates overall for credit cards?
For credit cards, I don't necessarily think that we will see rates differ. I think we'll probably see the same average rates. I do think that we will see a tightening of credit, though. So you might not be getting approved as much as you were in the past, depending on your credit standing. You might not be getting approved for 0% APR for 18 months anymore. Those numbers might shrink to back down to 12 months or something like that. I don't think the actual rates are going to differ. I do think that credit in general and who credit is available to will start to tighten up.
Another interesting thing that I saw in your credit card debt survey was that men are feeling less stress about debt in the larger conversation, especially during Women's Day. We were hearing about the stark differences between how the pandemic has struck, and particularly financially, men and women so differently. What is it that women are stressed out by more so than men when it comes to a credit card debt right now?
Well, women have been seeing higher levels of unemployment during the pandemic than men. So that's, I would say more stressful. A lot of times when people are tasked with teaching at home, women kind of take on that burden as well. So they're having to make the choice between keeping a job or, becoming an at-home kind of teacher more so as well. So I think there are a couple things at play here in terms of men versus women and their feelings about credit card debt.
Now, healthcare always, when it comes to the finance of it, whether it's getting insurance or paying for medical debts, the cost of health insurance and health care itself is always controversial. Your survey found that a majority of Americans, at 60%, say that healthcare expenses are worth going into credit card debt. Is this something that has changed over time, and for that matter, would you advise another way, if possible, to pay for healthcare debt than using a credit card?
Well, I think if people are using a credit card to pay for their health insurance, that probably is one of the last resorts. Then that number of people willing to go into debt to pay for healthcare has risen this year because, more people needed it this year. I think there's a much larger conversation at hand, rather than blaming a consumer and an individual how to pay for this. I think this is really a top-down level discussion in terms of healthcare in general and how it's being paid for and how much of a business it really is.
Talking with WalletHub analyst Jill Gonzalez, 2020, a year that has seen a substantial portion of consumer credit card debt get paid off. So, Jill, is it kind of up in the air at this point? Wait to see what we experience in terms of vaccination rates and how much of the economy reopens. I know there's a lot of discussion right now about whether early 2022 will see some of the same restrictions because of the vaccine challenges, or is this expected shopping spree post-pandemic expected to just kind of take us nearly back to where we were in terms of credit card debt?
In terms of credit card debt and what we would add on this year, our projection is around $50 billion. That's kind of what we've been doing every year for the past 10 years. So I would expect that number to really normalize by the end of the year in terms of people getting back to retail shopping, in terms of, jobs coming back, hopefully. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see the same payoff. I think we're going to see more debt incurred in 2021.
Jill Gonzalez, WalletHub analyst, a pleasure to have you on. Always love reading WalletHub surveys and various metrics that paint a nice picture of what's going on in specific areas and then getting that nationally as well. A pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thanks.
Alrighty. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Joining me this afternoon is Eric Power, an active combat veteran, entrepreneur, social activist, and the author of the book, Don't Shoot Your Future Self. April is Stress Awareness Month, and do we know that with coronavirus, the economy that is less than ideal, and all of the other challenges of navigating life in a pandemic, stress is in abundance, but taking next month to make awareness and try to find ways to cope with so many of the things that stress us out and afflict us. Hope to get some insight on that talking to Eric Power this afternoon. A pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure as well. So you're the founder and CEO of Veterans Disability Help, and you've written this book, Don't Shoot Your Future Self. Wonderful title, definitely catches the attention. What is it that your experience, obviously being in the military and in combat at that, I'm sure is an overwhelming source of stress that many of us civilians would never be able to imagine. But what is your story, and how did you come to where you are now?
Well, great question. Long story, I can take up to 2 hours, but I'll give you the short and skinny of it. 10 years in the Navy, 7 deployments, 3.5 years total over OEF, OIF, OND, which is Operation Northern Dawn. Seen a lot of bad stuff, got hurt pretty bad, hurt my back pretty bad. And then when I got out of the military, went through the VA disability process, and in the military, I was a PR, a parachute rigger. So we always paid special attention to detail. If we made a mistake, lives could get lost if they had to use the parachutes. Or, when we were working with special forces, if you make a mistake and they jump, you don't want to do that. So getting out of the military, I was running into a lot of issues in this process. After about the 6th or 7th place that I went to the DAV, the VA, I just kind of got fed up. Actually bought the law, read it, figured out all the answers to my own questions, figured out that the front line system is broken, the back line system is not. Was going through my undergrad degree in business at the time, and they say in business, if you can solve a problem, and you come up with a solution, you have a business. In a marketing class, we were supposed to see how many leads we could get for a fictitious business. Everybody, got in like 2 or 3 leads. I came in thinking I wasn't doing very well, and I came in with like 49 leads, right? And this was 7-8 years ago. And then kind of through practice, through, a couple of years doing it on my own, quit my corporate job, and in 2015 got incorporated. And started my own self, started picking up the phone, creating the business. Today, we have 20 in-house employees and we've about 20 agents. Today, actually last week, we turned our marketing on for 4 days. And in those four days, we got like 1,400 veterans reached out to us for help. And so we're building, we're doing very well. Wow. That's kind of the short and skinny of it without the book. The book came last year when one of my mentors, Greg Reed, who's world-renowned writer, movie producer. I'm very, very blessed to have him as a mentor. He called me one day and he was telling me about the story he's had. It's called Be Kind to Your Future Self. And as we were writing it, he asked me if I wanted to partner up on the book and write it. And so as we're writing it, pandemic hit, my stress was at a high. My family, my wife and my girls actually got trapped in Japan. So we were separated. I was in the States. And when I was writing the story he pitched to me was so similar to my story. I just kind of took over writing it. At the end, he's like, this is your book. This isn't what we talked about. And he gave me full rights to it. And so we released it on, as my first book. So you can say the universe kind of wrote it. And then now we're actually working on the book, Be Kind to Your Future Self.
Fantastic. Such a remarkable story to hear, a source of inspiration, given that so often we hear about PTSD and other conditions, stress that afflict our veterans, and oftentimes the help that they need for one reason or another is not given nor received. But this is a story that is certainly, I would say in many cases, defies the norms. What was it that you've learned in the service, and what are some of the biggest sources of stress that you've had to contend with, and how have you done that?
What I learned in the service is my work ethic. I learned how to wake up in the morning and get right to work, get to the plan of the day, and that never left me, right? What I didn't learn in the service was the difference in how the military operates to how the civilian world operates. I continued after my military service. I was in corporate world as a contractor for the military, doing roughly the same thing. When I left there, the only thing I knew how to do was operate that same way. And so I built my company under the same kind of structure, which really helps. Right. One of the things that I personally went through was the PTSD symptoms. I still have them sometimes on a daily basis. Sometimes I go without for a couple of weeks, and then there's a trigger, and then I use my support system, my wife, my assistant, my best friend, all those people that, my mentor that are really close to me. I pick up the phone and I'm definitely on the phone with them, calling them. And then repeat the rest of the question.
Well, what are some maybe practical tips that you have, given the unique experience that you have in the position that you have that is different from civilians, but also different from that of a lot of your fellow veterans and those still in active combat?
What I've learned is your mental attitude makes a difference. In the military, right, you're forced to push. You can't quit. You can't give up. You sign a contract. Your butt's owned by the government. And so you have to do that. In the military, you learn ownership, you learn responsibility, you learn your work ethic. If you can apply those things when you get out to something of your own, right, it'll either won't, and you can either pivot and continue going and with that one project, or you can give up and try to start a new project, right? The responsibility when you get out, it's you're starting over. And one of the things that veterans don't realize is they think there's going to be this massive support system, when it's really, in my opinion, it's a little subpar. But again, it's such an overwhelmed system. But you learn the ownership abilities, you take ownership of your life. You have to realize that when you get out of the military, you're starting boot camp of life. So when I got out, at 30 years of age, I honestly felt my mind retracted to when I was 18 or 19. And so I had to figure out how to get caught up very quickly to my peers in the civilian world. And so one of the things I did was I sought guidance. I sought counsel and not advice, right? And so I went to the people where I wanted to be. Greg, I went to conferences, personally introduced myself to him, worked a plan out to where I could work my way into his inner circle. And that's basically what I did over 4 or 5 years. I've worked my way into the inner circle. Use your resources. There's plenty of people out there. It's like in the military, you're not allowed to jump the chain of command, right? In the civilian life, we encourage you to jump the chain of command. Go to that person you want to be in 5 years from now. And if you have to work for them for free, work for them for free, whatever you can do to get to learn that knowledge, right? And then there will be support. There will be, what's the word I'm looking for? There will be guidance. There will be counsel on the way. You want to seek counsel, not advice, right? Everybody can give advice. Advice is free. Counsel comes from people who've been there, who've done that, who is a proven success. And so it's kind of what I did. And then as my company grew, I had my mentors and fortunate enough to meet some of the biggest names in the business industry and learn from them, and go on a 2-year modern day Napoleon Hill adventure with Greg, where we went around the world interviewing anybody worth from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 figures, and learned. And we got in front of them and said, how did you do this? How did you get from A to B? How did you spend, $20,000 on one piece of land and then turn around and sell it for 700 million? Please tell us how. And so over the 2 years, we actually learned that all the businesses practices. I finished my degree, and then I'm like one or two classes away from my master's in business. Now it's just become I'm paying myself to do work, so it really doesn't make sense to me now. And does that answer your question, or I can keep going on? I tend to ramble.
Not rambling at all. Remarkable story. Talking this afternoon with Eric Power, an active combat veteran, entrepreneur, activist, and author of the new book, Don't Shoot Your Future Self. Stress is something that a lot of us deal with, especially with COVID-19, and Eric knows about that on a much deeper level, being in active combat, dealing with PTSD. Eric, when we talk about helping people in a support structure, you'll oftentimes get no argument that those who have been in the military are often getting the short end of the stick when it comes to that. What are some ways that those of us who would like to be a greater support to our military men and women can help? I'm sure there's a number of things, but from somebody that's been directly there, what is something that you would say is an area that people can start and begin to be the support that our servicemen and women need?
Well, if we'll start out, if the veteran is in their immediate family, because a lot of times veterans get out and they shelter themselves, stay indoors, and shut down because it's such a massive change. The brain kind of goes into a shock, right? And so if you have a veteran in your immediate family that's separating or separated, right, just be there for them. Let them know that you love them, appreciate them, let them know that it's okay to feel alone, right? If they need help, get them to some sort of mental health, if anything like that, urgent care, anything like that. Don't take anything they say for granted. Veterans are usually very direct. And if someone says, I'm thinking about killing myself or I'm going to kill myself, that's a big red flag that you need to get help. We get, a few of those calls that we deal with here a week or on a month. If they're not, if you really want to help and you're motivated and you don't really have any veterans, but you're just, pro veteran and you want to go help volunteering, there's, I'm sure the VA, the DAV, different nonprofits in the area and their local areas would love to help. If you really want to be motivated and help and want to work, I'm always hiring agents. And like I said, we have more calls that we can, or more leads that we can deal with right now. We just brought on 6 new agents this week. If you go to our website, that's another way you can help support. If you have a veteran friend, just let them vent. If they call you in the middle of the night, and you're that person, let them vent, let them talk, because that's really, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, and through that process, starting over, you're going to get punched in the face, right? And whether it's from a pandemic or whether it's from a loss of a job or whether it's, from, a friend, dying in a car accident, you're going to get punched in the face. And the most important thing is don't shoot your future self. Don't quit, right? And if you quit in the beginning, it'd be just like when you quit after boot camp or after your A school or AIT or after your first or your second year in the military, right? If you did a 4-year tour in the military, a 10-year tour, whatever amount of tours, and you got out honorably, that's a success. Civilian life is the same way. It's going to take time. Don't quit. Too many times, far too often, a common theme of when I get on the phone with these guys who are ready to basically shoot themselves is they quit. And I always ask them, like, well, why'd you stop? And nobody ever, well, why'd you quit? Nobody ever has a really good answer. Well, it was too hard. No, you just didn't want to do it because of this reason. And then I have to basically Barney style out. No, this is why. This is the brain. When the brain gets confused and angry, that's actually a natural response from the brain because you're learning a new process. In boot camp, we all were scared and angry because we were learning a new process, but your body naturally adapts. You have to give it time.
Talking with Eric Power, author of the book Don't Shoot Your Future Self, also the founder and CEO of Veterans Disability Help LLC. Eric, kind of looking at the other side of it, of course, there's an enormous degree of patriotism associated with serving in the military and various branches. What would you say to a young man or young lady that is considering joining the service, looking at a better life, shot at an education, of course, serving their country? What are some things that you would say, perhaps a word of caution or just general advice, and of course, the experience that you have to go along with that advice?
Absolutely. Joining the military was the best decision I ever made in my life. It got me here, right? And some people's situations, whether they want to join or whether they don't want to join, are different. I'm all for it. If you want to join the military, join. It's a great, brotherhood. It's a great family to be a part of, and it's the honor you learn and the skills you learn. Not only from when you get out after you honorably serve, you get schooling, you get paid to go to school. You can get your VA disability up to $3,500 a month, plus benefits for your children as well. However, you have to be okay with knowing that you can die. And that's the biggest thing. You have to be okay with knowing that you will go to war, right? We've been in a war since 2003. Because I was part of the initial wave out there, 2003. And so you're going to get deployed, you're going to see some bad shit, right? Excuse me. You're going to see some bad stuff. You're probably going to get injured, right? Your body's going to be 10 times older when you get out. But it's something I would never, I don't regret. It's something I'll never take back. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made, and gave me 10 years of brotherhood, to be a part of something greater than myself. I've made some of my best friends in the military. I've seen places, bad stuff did happen, but there was a lot of good as well. And you learn work ethic, you learn discipline, you learn so many things, leadership. You learn, there's, I like, if I have two people in front of me, and one tells me they're a vet and I'm interviewing them for a job, one tells me they're a veteran, the other one tells me not, 99% of the time I'm going with a veteran, just because of the work ethic. And I know that, veterans are dependable, and I know how to relate to them because I am one.
Talking with Eric Bauer, a veteran, of course, author of the book Don't Shoot Your Future Self, Veterans Disability Help LLC, founder and CEO. Eric, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I wish that we had more time, but if listeners want to get in touch with you, and somebody in the military, somebody trying to help those in the military, what's the best way for people to find and contact you?
So our website is veterandisabilityhelp.com, not veterans, veterandisabilityhelp.com. The office phone number is 760-463-1138. If you submit an email online through our website, it goes straight to me. My email is eric@disabilityhelp.com. Any one of those ways, you could reach out to my team or me directly.
Eric Bauer, a joy to have you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation. And also, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You have a wonderful day.
You.
Bye-bye. Joining me this afternoon on KMJ is Dr. Cass Ingram. We hear a lot about toxins in our world today. It could be anything from the political climate to toxic masculinity. You name it, there's likely some sort of toxin associated with it. But this is a little bit different. We're going to talk about toxic foods and malnutrition and problems associated with eating foods that are toxic for our bodies. Dr. Ingram is the author of the book Foods That Cure. Dr. Ingram, a pleasure to have you this afternoon.
I bet you, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much. When we look at the average diet of Americans, it's no secret that for many decades and several generations, lots of things that we probably shouldn't be consuming, we're doing every day, but there's a lot of disagreement as to what exactly does what.
It shouldn't be that difficult. We really shouldn't be consuming transgenic GMO material. I mean, the gene pool and the hybridization and all that's been 10,000 years. Just leave it alone. So, and we shouldn't be consuming man-made chemicals. And then you have your pesticide and herbicide residues. That's a danger enough. So, we should be able to make a decision here.
What are the top toxins that the average American consumes each day?
The biggest one is GMOs, because they're so pervasive and we don't even know we're consuming them. And then your herbicide and pesticide residues, I'd say, press release or not, that those are the top things. Food additives like red dye, yellow dye, aspartame, those are big ones too. If we could deal with these three categories, we could make our lives healthier. The GMOs, the corn, soy, canola, cottonseed, anything from corn, those are big ones.
Now, what is it? Is it research that's been suppressed? Is it highly effective marketing? Why is there not more of a backlash against toxins in our foods?
You got the revolving door, don't you? It's the EPA and the FDA. You pay somebody $500,000 to be your agent, and they get into the government, and there's no way you can get any information. If it was a legitimate, flat-out scientific study, like Cirolini's work in France, where he showed that if the rats are given genetically engineered corn, they get cancers that are the same as a watermelon in a human, I think people would be saying, oh, I shouldn't be eating that. But the revolving door kind of protects everybody. You put in administrators, you put in captains, you put in sergeants, generals, and nobody gets to learn. Just like what Donald Rumsfeld, they couldn't get aspartame approved, then he became the Secretary of Defense or something, and he rammed it through. Now we have aspartame and everything. The FDA refused to allow that at first. So until we stop the crony capitalism, we're going to have food additives. We're going to have poisons. We're going to have too much pesticide residues.
Talking with Dr. Cass Ingram on KMJ this afternoon, author of Foods That Cure, How to Eat Smart in a Toxic World. Dr. Ingram, you mentioned crony capitalism and the problems associated with bad actors and greed in government. Is this something, though, that should be fought along political lines? Because that seems to be where it is at the expense of everybody's health.
Well, it seems like if you try to fight in the political realm, you spend a lot of money and time and go around in a circle. The best thing is for somebody just not to buy the junk. You say, well, I'm just not going to support the GMOs in my family. I know what they are. I mean, what can you do? I'm not going to support. I'm going to buy organic. I'm going to go to the farmer's market. Do you spray? I spray 3 times a year. Okay, no thanks. Do you spray? We don't spray anything, but we're not organic. It's expensive. Or can you guarantee me you don't? No, we don't spray anything. That's why our apples are warded. We have to change our thinking. We're not going to support junk, poison that could hurt our kids or generations or ourselves. So I don't know any other way to fight it.
Doing it at a consumer level, though, obviously means kind of a lengthy transition away from how we've done things for so long.
Oh, I did, but at least you can get some results. You can give them a stiff upper lip and say, "I'm not buying your laboratory synthesized meat. You can sell it. I can't stop you, but at least I'm not a buyer." That's a start.
Now, there's controversy as to whether food that is labeled organic with that seal from the USDA and such is really free of a lot of the chemicals. There's a lot of controversy about that.
It should be a controversy. The organic allows 5% GMOs and a certain level of Roundup. So you have to talk to your farmer's market guy, your local honey beekeeper, your certified organic people that put the seal on there, and you're going to have a better bet than just USDA organic green. It's sort of corrupted the marketplace, but it's still organic. There was a guy, though, that for 10 years, he sold genetically engineered common Monsanto corn as organic. He got away with it. When they found him, he committed suicide. Oh, no, there's no guarantee. But certified organic by Tilth Farming Oregon or MOSA, better. They do inspect everybody. It's hard to get away on those people.
There's debate as to whether packaged snack food that has a lot of ingredients many of us can't even name is worse than a lot of the low-budget fast food. Which is worse?
Both are an issue. It would be so much better if we could buy a sack of potatoes, a couple dozen free-range eggs, and some broccoli, and just buy food. I don't know. Does that mean you have to cook? Well, so what if you have to boil it? I boiled 3 eggs this morning. What was the big deal? So what's the big deal about doing something so you don't get to be 400 pounds overweight and get diabetes and stupid heart disease and end up with all kinds of medication? You could at least eat whole foods, nuts and seeds, and maybe feta cheese. I don't know. Something better than what you're doing now.
Dr. Cass Ingram, author of the book Foods That Cure, How to Eat Smart in a Toxic World. Dr. Ingram, you talk about using herbal formulas to detox. What does that exactly entail?
Those would be the spices, the spice extracts. They're pretty famous in your area, the oil of wild oregano. I like the oregarest, the juice of oregano. I like the wild dandelion extract. I don't really talk about it that much in the book. The book is just how to use foods garlic, onion, ginger. These things have what we call antioxidants that stimulate the liver to dump heavy metals, dump the pesticides and herbicides, and you just don't know that, but it's in the book. And so my publisher said, "You ruined us. You wrote 10 books in one book. You should have spread it out." Well, I don't know anything about that stuff. I just write the book. And but top kiwi tips, top cantaloupe tips, top onion tips, top coriander tips, top papaya tips and cures, parsley, peanuts and peanut butter, pumpkin, radishes, red sweet pepper. Everything you buy at least you get to know what's in it and what it does.
Now, when it comes to hydration, which is important for the diet as well.
Yeah, drug residues, hormones and vaccine residues even, and urine and everything. It's a problem. At least a Brita filter, at least something to try to reduce by 90% some of the toxic load in the tap water would be a water filtration system. Some people who can afford it, they buy like a mineral water from a reputable brand. Oh, don't ask me who the reputable brand is. There's about 50 of them. Puro Steiner, Apollinaris, Perugino. What is the other one? I don't know.
There are people who are skeptical, though, who say, okay, maybe we have higher rates of cancer today, but look, detection has increased and improved, and look, life expectancy is longer, so what's the big deal with these foods?
You want to get the stupid cancer? If you at least avoid the outright carcinogens, why not take a little time for yourself? Plus, you've got diabetes and heart disease. You know they're dietary. Sugar diabetes, after all, right? Used to be called. They don't say it anymore. So, heart disease, drop dead of a heart attack. So maybe your aunt lived to be 85, but you don't make it because you just abused yourself. Your genes might be different. So that's Food's the Cure. How to use food from the supermarket and the farmer's market and the health food store as medicine. I even list in the appendix everything from abscess and brittle nails to what does it end with? Hearing loss, different poison ivy. Gosh, I shouldn't have wrote this book. There's too many things. A yeast infection.
Dr. Cass Ingram, author of Foods That Cure, Eating Smart in a Toxic World, seems like a difficult concept, but in the book, ways to improve and make changes, albeit incrementally.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Ingram, a pleasure to have you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
See you next time.
All righty, you take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The conversation continues on KMJ with Aaron Abeytia.